I never thought he would look at me like that. Not Kevin. Not my best friend of 3 years. Not the guy who used to bring girls back to our apartment and loudly pretend I didn't exist while I lay awake on the other side of the wall, staring at the ceiling and hating myself for caring. But that night, when his eyes locked on mine from across the kitchen, there was something in them that didn't feel friendly. It wasn't casual. It wasn't joking. It was hungry. And the worst part? I didn't look away. Kevin and I met sophomore year. We were both 22 now, both technically adults, even if neither of us had our lives together. We ended up roommates by accident, a last-minute housing disaster that forced us into the same two-bedroom apartment near campus. He was loud, confident, athletic, the kind of guy who walked into a room and didn't just get attention. He expected it. I was not that. I'm Brian. I keep my head down. I overthink everything. I say, I'm fine, when I'm absolutely not fine. I've been out since I was 19, but I'm not exactly waving a rainbow flag off the balcony either. I just exist. Quietly. Kevin knew I was gay from day one. It was never a big thing. He just nodded when I mentioned an ex-boyfriend and said, cool, like I told him my favorite pizza topping. That was it. And for 2 years, that's how it stayed. He dated girls. I pretended I didn't notice how good he looked coming out of the shower in just a towel. We drank beer on the couch. We watched games. We argued about whose turn it was to buy toilet paper. Normal. Safe. Until things started shifting. It wasn't one big moment. It was small stuff at first. The way he started sitting closer to me on the couch. The way his knee would press against mine and stay there. The way he'd hold eye contact just a second too long when we were joking around. At first, I told myself I was projecting, that I wanted something to be there, so my brain was twisting normal interactions into something else. But then there was the night everything changed. It was late, maybe 1 a.m. We'd both had a few drinks, not wasted, just relaxed. Music was playing low from his speaker in the kitchen. The apartment lights were dim, just the over-the-stove glow and a lamp by the couch. He was leaning against the counter, sleeves pushed up, forearms flexing while he talked about something stupid that happened at work. I wasn't really listening. I was watching his mouth move. And then he stopped mid-sentence. Why are you looking at me like that? He asked. My stomach dropped. Like what? Like, he exhaled, running a hand through his hair. Like you're thinking something. I laughed it off. You're not that deep, Kev. He didn't laugh. He just stared at me. And that's when I saw it. That look. Not teasing. Not confused. Focused. His eyes dropped to my mouth for half a second. Then back up. And something inside my chest snapped tight. I should have moved. I should have broken the tension. Said something stupid. Made a joke. Instead, I just stood there. Waiting. You ever? He started, then stopped. Ever what? My voice came out quieter than I meant it to. He pushed off the counter slowly and took a step toward me. And another. Until there was barely a foot between us. You ever think about stuff you probably shouldn't? He asked. My heartbeat was so loud I was sure he could hear it. All the time, I admitted. We were close enough now that I could smell the beer on his breath. Feel the heat coming off his skin. My brain was screaming at me that this was a bad idea. That I was misreading everything. That I was about to ruin the best friendship I'd ever had. But my body? My body didn't care. His hand came up like he was going to gesture while talking. Instead, his fingers brushed lightly against my wrist. Not an accident. Not casual. Deliberate. My breath caught. His eyes dropped to where we were touching, then slowly lifted back to mine. And that's when he looked at me like that. Like he wasn't seeing his roommate. Like he wasn't seeing his best friend. Like he was seeing a man he wanted. I had fantasized about that look more times than I'd ever admit. In the shower. In bed. In those quiet moments when he laughed at something I said, and I let myself pretend for just a second. But this wasn't fantasy. This was real. Kevin, I said, and it came out more like a warning than a question. He swallowed. You're not the only one who thinks about stuff, he said quietly. And then, God, his hand slid from my wrist up to my forearm. Slow. Testing. Waiting for me to pull away. I didn't. I couldn't. The air between us felt electric, like if either of us moved too fast, something would explode. Tell me to stop, he said. But he didn't sound like he wanted me to. I shook my head before I could think about it. That was all the permission he needed. His other hand came up, fingers brushing my jaw, hesitant at first, like he couldn't believe he was doing it. And neither could I. You have no idea, he murmured, eyes dark, how long I've wondered what it would be like to look at you the way you look at me. My stomach flipped. You noticed that? I whispered. He let out a low breath that almost sounded like a laugh. Brian, he said, voice rough now. I notice everything. And then his thumb dragged slowly across my lower lip. Not rushed. Not drunk. Intentional. My knees actually felt weak. I had never seen him like this. Never seen that restraint barely holding back something deeper. And suddenly, I wasn't scared of ruining anything. I was scared of not finding out what would happen next. Because the way he was looking at me, it wasn't curiosity anymore. It was decision. And I knew, the second his forehead rested lightly against mine, that whatever line we'd been standing on for the last 3 years, we were about to cross it. For a second, neither of us moved. Kevin's forehead rested lightly against mine, his hand still cupping my jaw, his thumb barely touching the corner of my mouth. I could feel his breathing, slow, controlled, but not calm. Not even close. Mine wasn't any better. This was the moment where one of us was supposed to panic. Laugh it off. Step back and say something like, we're drunk, or this is weird, or let's forget this ever happened. But neither of us did. Instead, he whispered, you sure? That was Kevin. Even now. Even with that look in his eyes. Always giving me an out. I nodded. That was all it took. His hand tightened slightly against my jaw, not rough, just certain, and then he leaned in the last inch and kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't messy or impulsive like I'd imagined it 1,000 times. It was slow, careful, like he was trying to memorize the feeling. And the second his lips touched mine, something inside me completely gave in. Because it didn't feel wrong. It didn't feel strange. It felt like something that had been building quietly for years finally snapping into place. I kissed him back. At first, it was tentative, both of us testing the reality of it. But when I didn't pull away, when my hand came up and grabbed lightly at the front of his shirt, something changed. His control slipped. The next kiss was deeper, warmer. His other hand slid from my arm to my waist, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. And that's when I realized something that made my head spin. Kevin wasn't experimenting. He wasn't curious. He knew exactly what he was doing. When he finally pulled back, both of us were breathing heavier than we should have been from just kissing. His eyes searched my face, like he was looking for regret. Still okay? He asked quietly. I let out a shaky laugh. If you ask me that one more time, I might start thinking you're the nervous one. He smiled, but the confidence he usually showed wasn't there. It was softer. Brian, he said, voice low, I've been nervous for months. That hit me harder than the kiss. Months. I repeated. He nodded slowly, his hand still resting at my waist, thumb moving absent-mindedly against my side like he didn't even realize he was touching me. I didn't know if it was just you, he admitted, or if I was just noticing things because you were there. But then I started thinking about you when you weren't around. My heart kicked hard in my chest. And that scared you? I asked. He huffed a quiet breath. No, he said. What scared me was realizing I didn't want it to stop. The kitchen suddenly felt very small, very quiet, very real. I swallowed. So what is this? He didn't answer right away. His eyes dropped to my mouth again, then back up. I don't know, he said honestly. But I know I don't want to go back to pretending I don't look at you like that. That look. He was giving it to me again now. Intense, focused, like I was the only thing in the room. And suddenly, I remembered every moment over the last year. The lingering touches. The way he'd watch me when he thought I didn't notice. The way he'd started choosing the seat next to me every time. You were waiting, I said quietly. For you to notice, he admitted. I shook my head, half laughing. Kevin, I've been noticing since the day you moved in. That actually made him grin. Yeah, he said softly. But you never did anything about it. Because you were straight, I reminded him. His expression shifted slightly, not defensive, just thoughtful. I thought I was, he said. There was something vulnerable in the way he said it that made my chest tighten. So what changed? I asked. His hand slid from my waist, fingers threading slowly through mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. You, he said simply. And then, after a small pause, and the way you look at me like I'm not a joke, not a phase, not something you'd regret. I squeezed his hand before I could think too much about it. You're not, I said. We stood there for a moment, just holding hands in the middle of the kitchen at 1 in the morning, both of us looking like we'd just stepped into a completely different version of our lives. Then Kevin broke the silence. Can I ask you something? Yeah. If we do this, he said slowly, and it gets complicated. I already knew where he was going. You're asking if we'll ruin the friendship, I said. He nodded. I thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. Kev, I said quietly, stepping closer again. I think we already crossed the risky part. His eyebrow lifted slightly. When I leaned in just enough that our noses brushed. When you started looking at me like you wanted me, I whispered. His breath hitched. And this time, when he kissed me again, there was no hesitation at all. His hand slid around my waist, pulling me fully against him, and the kiss deepened, warmer, stronger, like he'd finally stopped holding back. And somewhere in the back of my mind, one very clear thought settled in. This wasn't just a moment. This wasn't just curiosity. Whatever was happening between Kevin and me, it was only just beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Not because anything crazy happened after the kitchen. Actually, that was the strange part. After the second kiss, after the way his hands had tightened around me and the air between us had gone from tense to something heavier, Kevin had pulled back. Not abruptly, not awkwardly, just careful. He rested his forehead against mine again, breathing out slowly. Okay, he said quietly. If we keep going right now, I'm not going to think clearly. I blinked at him. Since when do you think clearly? He laughed under his breath, but there was something serious behind it. I mean it, Brian, he said. This matters. And that word hit differently. Matters. So instead of dragging me to his room like part of me had expected, he squeezed my hand once and said, let's not rush this and mess it up. Which, honestly, only made my chest tighten more. Because Kevin didn't rush anything he didn't care about. The next morning was weird. Not bad. Just different. I woke up earlier than usual, my brain immediately replaying everything from the night before. The kitchen, the kisses, the way he'd looked at me. For a full minute, I wondered if I'd imagined it. Then I walked into the kitchen and saw 2 coffee mugs already on the counter. Kevin was leaning against it, scrolling on his phone. He looked up when he heard me, and instead of the usual morning man, he gave me a small, almost nervous smile. Hey, my stomach flipped. Hey, I said back. There was a pause. Not awkward exactly, just heavier than our normal mornings. Then he picked up one of the mugs and held it out to me. Made yours the way you like it, he said. That shouldn't have felt like a big deal. But Kevin had lived with me for 3 years and had never made my coffee before. I took it. Our fingers brushed. Neither of us pulled away right away. So, he said carefully, we're not pretending that didn't happen, right? I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Please don't pretend it didn't happen, I said. The tension in his shoulders eased immediately. Good, he said. Another pause. Then, because I've been thinking about it since you went to bed. My heart sped up. Yeah. He nodded slowly, watching me over the rim of his mug. And I realized something. What? He hesitated for just a second. I wasn't surprised. That stopped me. What do you mean? He set the mug down and leaned his hip against the counter, facing me fully. I thought I'd freak out, he admitted. Or overthink it. But when I kissed you, his eyes dropped briefly to my mouth again. It just felt right. God. I tried to keep my voice steady. So what are you saying? I'm saying, he said, stepping a little closer. This isn't some drunk mistake. And I don't want to treat it like one. The space between us was smaller now. Not touching, but close enough that I was very aware of him. Okay, I said quietly. Okay, he repeated. And then he did something that hit harder than any kiss. He reached down and took my hand. Not quick, not hidden, just held it. Right there in the kitchen, in daylight, like it wasn't a secret. I squeezed his fingers back before I could think too much about it. So what now? I asked. He gave a small exhale. I want to take you out. I blinked. Out. He nodded. Like an actual date, he said. Not a we live together, so let's hang out thing. I mean a real one. I stared at him. Kevin, I said slowly. Are you asking your roommate on a date? He smirked slightly. Yeah, seems convenient. He's already here. I laughed, but my chest felt tight in the best way. Okay, I said. His eyebrows lifted. That easy. Yeah, I said. Because if I think about it too long, I'm going to panic and assume this is some temporary identity crisis. He winced. It's not. I know, I said. And the way he looked at me then, steady, certain, told me he meant it. The date was supposed to be casual. That was the plan. Dinner at a small place near campus. Nothing fancy. Nothing that would make it feel like too much